Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today, we are going to be talking about what I call discomfort and what G calls clean or dirty pain, which I think is such a helpful way to call it. But first, we're going to start with a body-based self-connection practice. And then this morning, I'm going to lead us through a simple one you can do any place, anytime, if you have your own quiet mind and a few seconds to yourself. So first start by feeling your bum, wherever your bum is. Feel your feet on the floor. And this exercise is just going to be about finding your toes in connection with the ground. So press each of your toes into the ground. See if you can find all your toes. You can give them a wiggle or hold them steady, whatever feels good to you. Just notice the connection between your toes and the ground beneath you. How many toes can you find, G?
I find my big toe, both of them. And then like the middle ones are like hard to differentiate. And then I feel my like pinky toes. But when I follow the impulse of my feet and they're just starting at my big toes touching the ground. And then they want to like roll like on their tiptoes over to the edge until the pinky feels the ground. So I think I can
very
feel
different experiences depending on how our feet are shaped, I guess, hey?
Yep. And I can feel my second toe. I'm like, I have to look to see if that's what I feel. Yes. Second one. Yeah. And then the third toe and the fourth toe move together.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Great. There, we found our toes. So we were talking about this before we hit record, this idea of clean and dirty pain. I was talking about the discomfort we feel as we're growing and changing. We're often looking for comfort and security, and self-connection and present awareness will sometimes bring that and sometimes won't. And when we're trying to make changes in our lives, it can be uncomfortable. What is that discomfort in service of?
It's such a good question. What is this discomfort in service of? I think when we forget to ask ourselves what this discomfort is in service of, it's very easy to want to go back to our old programming because it's more comfortable. I think we're wired to want comfort, right? And I have to remind myself that all of the ways I behave, all of my patterns of being were established to bring comfort. So if I'm noticing now that maybe overall it's not bringing the level of comfort I'm hoping for, or it brings comfort in some ways, but it's harming or just not serving me in other ways, I'm having to remember that when I want to shift out of that old comfortable pattern, that it's going to feel sort of icky and gross and clunky and awkward and scary. And I have to remind myself of what it's in service of. And I really liked this way of looking at it that I learned from Resmaa Menakem. It's in his book, My Grandmother's Hands. And I loved that book. And I did a year-long book study on it, studying intergenerational racial trauma. And it was such a powerful book. I believe he talked about it in this book. If not, might have been, he has another book called, I think, Rocking the Boat. One of those books, he spoke about this idea of dirty pain and clean pain. And it speaks to whichever way I choose to go. I like to imagine it like a fork in the road, like a path, right? Like this I can go to the left or I can go to the right. I'm at this choice point. And one path is dirty pain. I'm going to stay doing what I'm familiar with. And it's going to be painful or uncomfortable in some way because it's not serving me. And I know it. Deep down, I know it, even if I don't always want to admit it. And down the other path, if I head down to the right, I'll call it, is the path of clean pain. It will also feel uncomfortable and clunky and gross and maybe painful and heavy at times, but it spits me out on this other side. It's in service of being more liberated. It's in service of this new way of being that I know I want, this new way of being that I know is more aligned to what I value deeply. And so I get asked this question a lot when people realize that what they're doing, the way they're living their life, is not working anymore. And they're facing that, they're accepting that. And then they have this inspiration and motivation of like, okay, these are the things I'm going to change, right? I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to start doing that, whatever it is. And then their next phrase is, but that's going to be so hard. And we sit and we chat about it and we talk about how it will be hard. It will be uncomfortable. And this is where I like to bring in this example of either pathway you choose, it's going to have different flavors of hard, different flavors of uncomfortable, different flavors of awkward, different flavors of upset. And what are they in service of? And it doesn't mean staying in our old patterns is bad or wrong or we should feel shameful. It's just knowing that if I choose that route, it will continue to give me the same flavors of pain and maybe even other types of pain, but it's just really giving more and more pain. And if I'm willing to go down a new path that will also feel uncomfortable, it's going to be in service of something bigger and greater for myself. And when I present it like that, people are like, well, both are going to feel hard. I want that one. And we look at that. Okay, so you're wanting the path of clean pain. It's going to be hard work, but there's something out there on the other side. We look at what's on the other side of this pain. We also talk about how everything in our body is going to want to take us back. Like, forget it. I'm going to run through the bushes if I have to and bushwhack back to that old path because I know it and it's familiar. And that's the kind of pain and discomfort that I know. And I think it's a good reminder to know that just because in one moment of clarity, in one moment of connecting to our inner truth, we decide we want the path of clean pain, it doesn't mean it's going to be just one decision moment done. You're going to have that choice moment. You're on that path at that crossroads over and over and over again. And we have to keep leaning either towards the path of clean pain or recognize when we've come back on that path of that old dirty pain and maybe even have a chuckle about it and bring some lightness to it and remind yourself of what you want on the other side. So that's been really helpful for me.
For sure. Yeah, there's clear, easy choice points, I think. Like there's obvious examples of this. And then there's more confusing, more subtle examples. So I'm thinking specifically about, say, the difference between if you want to stop smoking cigarettes versus if you want to stop being in relationships that don't feel loving and fulfilling. One's obvious, right? The other one might not be so obvious. And partly this is because all of our ideas about what feels comfortable and safe for us have been informed by someone else's ideas of what was comfortable and safe for them, right? So in this course of waking up and starting to feel ourselves and become aware of our patterns of behavior, we come to recognize that some of those things don't feel so good. And we still want love and connection. So we're in whatever relationships we're in, and maybe sometimes it feels good, sometimes it doesn't. maybe if we've had an upbringing or been surrounded by people who were mean to us, the feeling of love and gentle calmness can feel confusing, uncomfortable. That cleanness might feel dirty, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it can be so subtle, especially if we don't have something to hang on to on the other side. That feeling of simple love and presence isn't something that feels comfortable to us. So we can't see it on the other side of that wall so clearly as a choice point,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. That's why I think when we practice, or when I practice stuff like this, when I walk clients through practices like this, we start small with simple things where it is obvious, or it's much more obvious and it's much simpler. Even though there's still discomfort in choosing clean pain, we start there, because if we have no practice choosing a new pathway, and then all of a sudden we want to use this way of being with the things that matter the most to us, that touch on our abandonment wounds and attachment wounds the most, that stir up the most of our emotional intensity and fears, it's just not going to work, right? We're wired to self-protect, and it's going to feel much too overwhelming. So I would start with simple things like clean pain is drinking some water when you maybe want to be drinking something else. Just half a glass, where it's not in your usual habit pattern to like prioritize drinking water. You might look at the dirty pain as just, I'm just going to ignore that I'm thirsty, or I'm going to drink some more stuff with caffeine in it, drink some more stuff with sugar in it and artificial whatever's in it. That's the path of maybe dirty pain for you, where deep down it's probably not the best for you, but it's a habit that's well entrenched. It's easy, right? Start with something like that. And I'm not even saying don't ever go down, don't ever drink another whatever it is that you're trying to, shift away from. It's just, can I add something that's from the clean pain path?
Baby
And start
steps
with that,
themselves could be clean pain, right? We're so
right?
used to doing all of it or doing nothing. Baby steps could be a nice clean pain way to start.
Baby steps were a total clean pain path for me, because I used to think baby steps were a waste of time and would never amount to anything. So why bother? Yeah. And baby steps have been what has changed my life completely.
Yeah. There's a meme of a guy climbing two ladders. One has little rungs that are close together that he can climb, and the other one has giant ones that are so far apart he can't even reach them. That was really impactful for me to see the way I once lived my life, rungs too far apart.
I remember hearing you share that. I remember a time in my life where I was driven much more by the belief that, like, what's the most I can do? Right? So just walking upstairs, if I could walk up 2 at a time or 3 at a time, I'd be like, well, let's walk up 2 at a time, 3 at a time. It's much more efficient. But there was no comfort in that. It wasn't a pleasurable experience. And I noticed that my life was driven much more towards, if I can do it, I should. And let's be the most efficient and effective as possible. At that time, not realizing that pleasure also impacts, even if you don't care about pleasure and you don't want any pleasure in your life, pleasure and ease also impacts effectiveness and efficiency. When I talk to people who, I can just tell, I see my old self in them, and they really value effectiveness and efficiency. So they think all this baby step stuff and using simple tools to regulate themselves is a waste of time. So I don't fight them on it. I just say, would you like to be more effective and efficient? And they're like, yeah, I would. Okay, well, great. If you do this, this thing of feeling your toes on the ground, you're actually going to be more effective and efficient. And then if they're open, we talk about the science behind it. But that's made a big difference in my life of like, what if I just went up at one step at a time? Does that feel better for my body? Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah. Right, our nervous system is responding whether we're aware of it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a good opportunity for you to think about two things, I guess. What's the dirty pain, clean pain path, right? That's presenting in your life right now. And do you bring any pleasure and ease into the things that you do?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Those are great questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Homework. Off you go.
Home play, someone said to me recently.
Oh,
Home
that's a
play.
nice one.
Mm-hmm.
Home play. Yeah. Home self-discovery. Home self-connection.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that was a quickie. We're doing a quickie today.
Quickies.
We
Quickies.
got,
Yes.
who doesn't love good quickie, huh?
That's right. Yeah. Just brings back so many memories. And you can't help but sort of smirk, I think. But anyways,
When you hear the
I
word quickie?
yep.
Yes.
um oh, you were asking me if I have a practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have a practice. Let's go with I'm going to assume that you're listening and you can find a window in your space. And if you're outside, even better, you can do some version of this. So let's take a moment to feel your butt on the seat or your feet on the ground and notice your breath. And let's find something inside to look at. If you're already outside, maybe look at something that's relatively close to you. And we're going to look at that object and feel your butt or your feet. And now we're going to bring our attention to out the window, right? Looking outside. If you're already outside, look further away than that last object. And look at this object and feel your butt or your feet. And then now we're going to bring our attention back to something inside, back to something close to you. This time, let's practice with feel your hands. Feel your hands as you look at this thing that's either inside or closer to you. And then we're going to look outside again. Again, feeling your hands, maybe rubbing your fingertips together or giving your hands a squeeze. And then we'll finish off with bringing your attention to, again, something inside to look at or close to you. This time, looking at the object and noticing your breath. And then we'll do one more outside. Find something outside or far away. Noticing your breath. And then we'll bring our attention with hands on your body, just coming back to self. And take a moment to notice how that feels. This is a great practice for just learning how to narrow focus and expand focus, taking our focus beyond our sort of four walls, knowing that there's something beyond that, and then coming back in. I always feel different when I bring my awareness from inside to outside.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it feels more spacious.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Always good to bring awareness. Practice bringing that in the moment.
Yeah. I was actually talking to someone recently about, he said, I do this thing where I put 3 objects in front of me and I spend time looking at each one. I go from one to the middle one to the one on the right. And he's like, it makes me feel better. And I asked him, like, are you curious to know what else you're practicing in that? He's like, yeah, what am I practicing? I said, you're practicing focusing attention on one thing. And I suggested to him, if you want, you can add feeling your butt on the seat while you look at that thing. I said, you're practicing shifting your focus with intention to something else and then shifting it again. I said, and he had spoken earlier in the day about, having the experience of anxiety and overwhelm. I said, this is a great thing to practice because often when we have experiences of anxiety and overwhelm, we've been trained to uber focus on only one thing.
Mm.
And our muscle to shift focus isn't as strong yet. So every time you shift your focus from one object to the next, you're training that muscle and growing that pathway of being able to be intentional about shifting focus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're doing here too, like looking at something inside, looking at something outside, and coming back.
I want to acknowledge how long it might take a person and how long it took me for that to actually include my focus, right? Like it used to just be my body doing the things I was told to do. Look here, look there. Okay, my eyes move, but my focus was still somewhere internal, diffuse, anxious, not awareness.
Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay, right? Adding something in of my eyes look somewhere, even if your sensations are the same, even if your thoughts go to the same place, but something different is happening.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Beauty.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Go have
Anything
a
else you
quickie.
want to say? Go have a quickie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shift your focus. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us for this quickie. And we'll see you next week. So like, follow, and subscribe, please. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, share with somebody that you care about. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.